Hello, everyone. And what a great prompt to kick us off with, Ace. I'm enjoying thoroughly seeing these little emojis. Got the turtle, got the rocket ship. Hi all. My name is Melanie Naranjo, and I'm the CPO at Ethena. We are a compliance training company. We do everything from harassment prevention and cybersecurity to hotline and case management, and a whole bunch of really cool AI features that we are excited to share today. But that will be later on. For anyone who is new to one of these webinars, welcome, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Be prepared for a different webinar, unlike most webinars you have been to. This will be interactive, and so before I jump into the meat of today's topic, I want to share some ground rules with you all. Because this is interactive, I will be asking a couple of questions, and the ask is to answer in the chat. And if you don't want to be called on, because if you are an introvert, I feel you, I see you, I am one with you. Just put an asterisk next to your response, and that will be my cue not to call on you. I don't want your fear of being called on to be a deterrent to your participation. So with that said, I'm so stoked to be talking about this with the one and only Roxanne Petraeus, Athena's very own CEO. I'm going to give you a second to introduce yourself a little more, Roxanne, and chat some more about this in a second. But I will start by saying, all AI is everywhere. It's everywhere. And time and time again, I hear people struggling with AI adoption. And so Roxanne and I were talking about this. We were like, we should share our learnings with the world, both the good and the bad, because we don't want you all to feel like you're on your own with whether it's, stumbles, whether you were maybe slower than you wanted to be. And we also want to give you concrete tips that we have learned along the way to really set you up for success. So Roxanne, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to the audience. Maybe tell us a little bit why you're so excited and gung-ho about AI and this topic.
Hi, folks. This is just a real treat to be joining Melanie and all of you. I'm very excited to talk about this topic because I feel like it is everywhere, but it also kind of deserves to be. And there is like just so much to be excited about. And understandably, myself very much included, sometimes it can be easy to let like the fear or call it like more negative components of this kind of like overshadow this the opportunity. And even when I found myself talking about it to the company, I first found myself framing it almost in like, let's avoid the negative versus like, here's all this cool positive. So yeah, having like personally sort of stumbled my way through this, I'm very excited to be chatting about it today.
Nice. I'm particularly excited about having this chat with you because we thought about who would be best for this call. Should we bring in external experts? Should we partner with an external CEO? But at the end of the day, I think and in fact, give me a +1 if you agree with me in the comments. I think where the majority of the friction at companies with AI adoption comes from is between CEOs and heads of people, where it's like we're not speaking the same language. The CEO is driving for something, and the people leader's like, I don't know if we can do that. I don't have the clarity I need from you. Okay, if I don't get any +1s, I'm going to be very sad. And like, what is the point of this webinar? We can just close it out. What's the point? Okay, all right. I'm not alone. Thank you.
You bullied people into a +1. That
You know
doesn't
what? That is true. I did do that, and I have no regrets. I have no regrets. Okay, cool. So with that said, let's talk about the agenda real quick, just so you all know what to expect for anybody whose brain works that way, and then we will go ahead and kick it off. We're gonna talk just a little bit about this universal call to AI and action from CEOs. We're gonna talk about why so many adoption efforts flop. And then we'll share a couple of strategies that actually work and that you can action on. We at Ethena are not big on high level, vague word salad theories. We want to talk about practical tips that actually work and that we ourselves have tried and found success from. And then we'll do a quick Ethena AI Spotlight where we'll share some of the things that came out of our own AI adoption efforts internally at Ethena, and they were super, super stoked to share with you all. And then, of course, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. And also, I'm really enjoying in the comments these clarifications from people that it's coming from different people. Some people it's coming from your CIO, great. I've also seen some people say their CEOs are actually anxious about AI and what it could mess up internally. Roxanne, do you identify with that at all? Have you seen any CEO be scared of AI in your little CEO founder groups?
Totally. I think like this is like a new thing. There's not a playbook. Like CEOs didn't go through this early 5 years ago and get a preview. Like we're all sort of going through this change in real time. And so, yeah, I mean, I've even, I don't even have to say, like, I've seen it in other CEOs. Like, I've noticed. So I'm not our technical co-founder. That is Anne. And so, as a non-technical person, seeing this kind of tech revolution certainly made me feel like, oh man, like, am I at risk of like not keeping up? And I think it's a really logical place for a lot of people to be like approaching this with is a very natural fear that like change can be scary because you don't know what you will be like on the other side of that change.
Okay. All right. Let's kick it over to a couple of pulse check questions from the audience because I want to get a genuine sense of what's going on in your world, because it really could be that I am having a different experience than some of you all. So let's find out before we jump in, and that way we can focus on the right things. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being agree, 1 being disagree, in the comments, if you could put your answer to the following question or to the following prompt, 1 to 5. My CEO has been pushing hard for company-wide AI adoption. And by the way, if your answer is on the low end, I want to know who it is that's pushing for AI adoption and why you're on this call. I'm genuinely curious. Roxanne, I've talked to a couple of HR leaders where their CEO was against it and the HR person is really pro AI, but they can't get any budget for AI because their CEO is against it. So that's why I'm like genuinely curious. Yeah.
Honestly, mind blown. That's the first time I've heard that, but
Oh,
it makes sense. I mean, like, every company is different.
totally. I found it a lot. I mean, I won't use specific names, but I've like companies that are a little bit less tech focused, although I think you could argue that every company could benefit from tech, but like retail, for example, or just like anything in like in the financial world where it just feels like very, very scary and like like
Sure.
security. I've seen the most pushback there. Okay, Roxanne, I'm not going to call on anyone for this one. I'm more want to get your take. Don't worry, we'll have another pulse check opportunity. Y'all, one of you will be called on. Roxanne, looking at everyone's responses and the spread here, what are your knee-jerk reactions? Are you surprised? Do you have thoughts? What's going on?
I think I'm like maybe slightly surprised by the spread, but again, like I think it's super logical based on industry, company size, all of it. I think my experience, we are a tech company, and like venture backed, and so that's like a world that I spend more time in where I really can't say I've heard any quote anti-AI sentiment, which sort of makes sense because imagine being a tech company that is anti-tech. It's like a little bit hard to sort of square that circle. And I think something I have noticed is it also everyone bakes their own ideas into AI, given it's both like a broad term and then also like a deeply scientific term. And so when you ask people, are you pro productivity? It's very rare. I don't think I've ever heard a leader be like, no, like we do not like productivity. Like that's kind of a key part of running a business is you are like things like optimization and productivity are kind of like key components of running a business. And so then it's sort of interesting to figure out like, oh, okay, so where's the rub? Is it that you don't think AI will make you productive? I think there's actually really logical discussions to be had there. I don't know if folks have seen that like, there's different debates about how much more productive is an engineer, using something like a cursor, how much more productive is a salesperson? Is it actually causing switching costs? Like, I think there's a bunch of different angles at which to have questions or like want to unpack AI,
Yeah.
security, legal privilege, et cetera, being like data privacy being another really logical one. But the concept of just being anti AI, candidly, to me, is like a little confusing because it would be sort of like, I mean, we're hosting this webinar on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like, are we anti cloud provider?
Yeah.
Like it's just like it sort of feels like the difference between tech and AI it feels more spectrumy.
Yeah, two thoughts that come to mind for me are what's interesting is Roxanne knows this. I don't know if you all know this, but I will sit in on I'm part of this program where I demo or I sit in on demos for a bunch of like startup companies just to like give feedback, that sort of thing. And I remember even just like 6 months ago, every single AI driven demo or like AI focused demo or company, the whole HR audience was just like skeptical, skeptical, skeptical. What do you mean our employees are going to like can use AI for advice? Like then that means they're not going to go to HR advice and for advice
Mm.
and make all these mistakes and they're going to go rogue and so on and so forth. And it was just like pure, it was like fear-based and like a risk aversion. And what I have found over the last 6 months is something has changed, whether it's the CEO rallying cries, whether it's our own familiarity with what AI is, whether it's an understanding that like employees do have critical thinking, whatever the case may be. I've seen that really flip, such that HR professionals at least have been much more open and excited about what AI can do. So that's been interesting to me. And the other thing, and we'll talk about this some more, I'm sure, at some point, is I know I hear your point on like internal productivity, but I actually think one of the coolest things is thinking about how AI can drive your business forward from like a product perspective, and not just thinking about individual employees, but like how can you sell your product more effectively now that you've got all these cool AI tools and capabilities that other people will want to leverage. So yeah, definitely been cool, a cool journey for me at least. Okay, we got one more pulse check question, and then we'll jump into the meat of this all. All right, my CEO or whoever, whether it's your CIO, whoever, has realistic expectations about AI adoption. So 5 is, yep, totally reasonable, very realistic. I'm here for it. 1 is, what are you? I was going to say smoking, but maybe that's not, the right thing to say on a webinar. What are you? What's the right thing I can say, Roxanne? I'm so bad with sayings. What are you on? What? No, that's
Just gonna let you like you,
just
you smell
awkwardly stumble through this. I walked through this myself. That was on my battle. My
You're
bad.
doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Uh, yes, Kate, clearly this is gonna be my new persona. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of numbers on the low end. I'm seeing a few high ones, which is very cool. I'm gonna call on some of you as well. Let's start with someone on the low end because I like a bit of controversy, all right? So let's do Michelle Lodin, Lodin. You gave a 1, your CEO or whoever. Seems like they don't have realistic expectations about AI adoption. Tell me a little bit more. Why do you say that?
Hi, can
Right.
you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, we part of our business is in a pretty heavily government regulated
Mm,
space. And so I think first there's concern about making a mistake or, relying too heavily on AI and not using it to supplement or improve human performance, if you will. And so, our CEO is trying to send that message, but I think that's difficult for the more conservative, for lack of a better term, parts of our business. We definitely also have a tech side to our business, and they're way ahead of everybody else. So it feels a little bit like we're living on both ends of the spectrum, which I think means we're dragging some people along. And part of why I was interested in this webinar, because how do I help those people feel more comfortable while still balancing their intelligent and smart risk
yeah.
aversion?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, one of the core issues here is that you've got people on different ends of the spectrum, and so it's feeling like you're like one solution isn't really working for everyone. You're trying to figure out how do I bring everyone along on this journey. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Super helpful. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, let's call in someone.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Let's call in one more person on the low end, and then I'll do a high end. Kim Lands, Lands. You gave a 2. Why is this a 2 for you? I'll give you a second to oh, okay. Maybe there's a technical difficulty there, so I'll call in one other person then, somebody who didn't do an asterisk. Jamie Klein, Klein. Jamie, if you could tell us a little bit why you gave a 2 in response to this question. I'll give you a second. I saw you unmute there for a second, but maybe you have changed your mind about wanting to chat. Oh, go ahead. Yes, I can hear you. All right, Jamie, tell me a little bit more about why your expectations, the expectations feel a little bit unrealistic.
um, why they feel I actually don't. So I'm not sure if anybody else is experiencing this, but I feel like we're focusing so much on what the business product is going to be and not actually the internal adoption of what it's going to mean to get even our team to sell or even to use that product in a way that is going to be beneficial. So we're focusing on building. I'm not sure we're focusing on what it's going to take to make the people side of this work. So I would deem it unreal. I don't even think he thinks about the people side of what this is.
And can you tell me a little bit more? Like, what do you mean? Like, what issues are you worried you're going to run into? Or maybe you are already observing that you're running into?
So, we are building tools that could absolutely change how people work today with their clients.
Yeah.
right? And we haven't really prepared or done even any research around how do our teams feel about AI? Do they know how to use it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they going to, are they excited about it? We sometimes look very insular and I talk to the same people over and over again who deliver the same message. So I don't view that our leadership team in general is thinking about this as a people issue. They're thinking about it as a tech and product issue.
Okay, I hear you, Jamie. And I actually think you're saying something that probably most people will resonate. In fact, can we get a +1 in the comments if you also have seen it, a pattern of whoever it is, your CEO, your CIO, your CTO, where it's like full speed ahead, this is happening. It's not a conversation. It's me explaining to you the thing that is happening, and you all better get on board. Is that okay? Yeah.
You said that way better than me. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Jamie. Really appreciate you sharing with us. And clearly, I hope you can see that you are not alone here, and we will dig into that in today's conversation. I promise.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'm gonna call on one more person, one on the high end, because I'm just curious to know who feels so confident about their approach here. So someone who didn't put an asterisk. Let's see. I think I saw. Oh, here we go. Let's do Katie Mallard. I'm apologize if I mispronouncing that. It's Maillard. Katie Mallard. Please tell us about why you feel so confident putting a 5. Bold move.
I think it's because my CEO has low expectations. That helps me be a lot more confident. No, I think we have a very diverse team of in terms of like the technology that we use. I work for a company that does everything from put on events to build products. So we've got event leaders, we have, AI engineers on staff, and I think we kind of chunked it up into levels. And we're really just aligned with expectations for each of those levels. Like he's not coming in saying, hey, I know it's hard enough to get this person to answer an email, have them use some new technologies. No, I think we're being realistic about what the team needs. Because if we're coming at this from a productivity perspective, then we need to be solving a business problem for each of them. And so I think that's the realism is it's more of like, what is this business problem and how realistic is it that each of these teams will be able to evolve?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Katie. Appreciate you sharing. Roxanne, CEO, listening in, what's going through your thoughts as you hear everyone's responses? Anybody that you disagreed with, you agree with vehemently?
Well, I noticed there was a question that came through the chat that I thought was like kind of related to this, which was like basically like, what metrics should you track to know that adoption is happening? And we should say like here, I think adoption, we're mostly talking about like internal usage, right? So like, are my salespeople more productive? Can they handle a higher quota because of AI? Are my engineers doing X? Is my HR team, able to support more employees, that sort of thing? And I actually think that that is like one of the hardest questions. And I haven't seen a great, like people put into comments if you've seen anything really useful, but like answer to that metric of like, what does good adoption look like? We love Zapier as a company, for example. And I saw they put out something that was like, or maybe it was their CEO said like, I think we're cutting edge. And even I feel like we're not moving as quickly as we should. So like, I guess I would just flag that because there isn't this like readily agreed upon, like great looks like 70% of your company logging into these tools 3 times a day. It's actually very reasonable to have really different expectations of what usage should look like. What I find tricky is there isn't a great metric. And yet I can tell that like, even in our own employee base, I can just see where like someone is really leaning forward and they're constantly like sharing the learning or sharing something they've built. And so it's a bit of a tricky, like I have no metrics and I know it when I see it. And that can just be like a really tough place for all of us to be in. But I think we're going to realistically be there for a while because like, guess what? This is sort of like been around for 2-ish years in sort of any broad capacity. And so it takes a while to get benchmarks on like what good looks like.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point because I think, to be honest, early on when you and I had conversations around this, we had, I think, a healthy understandable amount of friction where
Yeah.
you were coming in hard, like, we got to roll out AI. It's got to be here tomorrow. And I was sort of like, hang on, what are we trying to achieve? What's the vision? How are we empowering employees to achieve this? And the place at which you started to win me over was we were having a conversation with, I think it was Asana's CPO, where
Uh-huh.
you like what I heard from you, what I thought I was hearing was everyone needs to be an AI expert tomorrow. And for me, I was like, that's impossible and unrealistic and setting everyone up for failure. But as we got deeper, what I heard you then say was, no, my goal is I want everyone to experiment. I want everyone to start experimenting today so that 1 quarter from now, we have a better sense of what it is that we can realistically achieve. And that really changed things for me, right? If the metric for success was experimentation such that at the end of the quarter, I don't know, I'm making it up, every employee has 3 tools that they've experimented with and ideas for how we might be able to leverage this moving forward. That's cool. And that feels very realistic and motivational to me. What goes
Yeah.
through your mind as I say this, Roxanne?
Yeah, I think a couple thoughts. I was, looked at the registration list beforehand, and I know a lot of you are from tech companies, so you might have a founder CEO, and I think that's a particular persona that is constantly dissatisfied with the status quo. So, like, surprise, surprise, whatever your adoption is, they will want it higher. And it's not that anything you're doing wrong. That's just like constitutionally what founders kind of are like. So that's one thought. Second thought is there's a small part of me that is a gym bro. And I think about AI in kind of a similar way, which is like, look, I'm not expecting that tomorrow everyone can deadlift 400 pounds. But if you tell me that people are not going to the gym at all the whole month, I'm not suddenly gonna, be surprised if you say like, oh, nobody's score improved. And we're like, well, like, were we doing the things that could be that were in our control such that we got the results that we were hoping for? No one knows what the right results are, right? We don't know if using AI makes an HR person 1.25 HR people or 2x HR, like we don't know. But I am like quite sold on the idea, mainly because I had to go through this journey personally, which I think is like another important aspect. Like, I built a custom GPT pretty early because I was like, look, how can I say, like, with a straight face, tell the company to start using these tools if I just don't have the slightest idea how they work and what they're capable of? And so I think sometimes separating inputs and outputs can be really helpful and aligning on like, what are the inputs you want to see? Input metrics are horrible typically. Like, I would not advise that you say, we're going to monitor how frequently people, use ChatGPT and consider that a metric for success, because guess what? People just like game that. So there is a little bit of nuance there, but like, I would strongly advocate for your starting position being aligned on a set of input metrics. So we're going to have lunch and learns, we're going to have leaders demo usage, we're gonna, whatever these like activities you think, to my example, that like we're going to the gym 3 times a week, align on those input metrics and then start to measure output metrics, but recognize that those are going to be quite a lagging indicator. Thank you to everyone for accepting the gym bro part of me here.
So, Roxanne, I want to dig into the CEO founder piece again, because I imagine a lot of people on the call are probably having to navigate that relationship and that tension. And what I have found to be the highest impact thing for me when it comes to navigating points of friction or misunderstanding is to just build a greater understanding of the other person's perspective. So tell me a little bit more about, what is driving CEOs to push so relentlessly? Like when you talk about this, like, well, if you tell me you're doing nothing, that's not great. Like, why is this so important to you as a CEO and as a founder?
I mean, I didn't live and like work through, for example, like, a lot of the previous like platform shifts, but people kind of talk about this like that. And I think that I mean, I don't know, like, I've just found it hard not to look at these tools and not feel a sense of awe. Like, it is just kind of wild. Like, we'll demo even like Athena's usage for product. But like, some of the things that we wanted to do years ago just weren't possible. And they were possible with 6 months of dev work. And
Yeah.
so to see some of these tools that can really do what, like, to my mind is magic, even if it is, call it like small scale magic. So a really dumb example, I was going to dinner last week in Manhattan, was like running late, and just like copied the email invite list, put it into ChatGPT and was like, please tell me 3 things about all these people who are going to be here, because I've done no prep. And I like read it on the L. And yeah, historically, I could have had an EA to like do the work, pull everyone's LinkedIn, but instead I can just do that myself. Like there's a sense of magic there that I think if you have played with these tools, you've also felt extreme disappointment. Like I had a silly example where something of a grocery list and ChatGPT responded to me something about like, and Jeremy will love this. And my husband was with me and he's like, my husband's name is not Jeremy. And he's like, who's Jeremy? And I was like, I don't know. Like it was just a hallucination. But the point is like, we've all had disappointments where you have tried these tools and they have flopped. But I think there can be this feeling of like, if you don't see the magic, how are you going to help bring my company the magic? Last thing I'll say is if you give a CEO a mic, you just got to buckle up.
I yank you out.
I think like one of the pieces of advice I would give anyone working with CEO, CIO, senior leadership, or whatever, is to go like spend a week using different tools. And we can talk about what tools those would be, but I would say like any tool better than no tool, to the point of like deadlift, like lift something better than lift nothing. Because I think there can be this inherent skepticism of like, Melanie, the reason that you don't want to push AI adoption is because you are scared because you don't like using these tools. And I think if you can combat that by saying like, look, I took a first pass at like doing this simple automation, I tried to vibe code something, like you will get so much respect in a small conversation because now I feel like you aren't trying to sabotage my whole company.
It is true. You were so much more open and amenable to my pushback in conversations once I started experimenting. I was like, I did the things, and I still have this
Well,
opinion.
because I think it just feels like it's as if I have young sons, and if you're like, your meatballs are gross, and I'm like, you didn't even try them. How
Fair
could you
enough.
possibly know that these
Yeah.
meatballs are gross or that these tools are bad?
Yeah.
I feel like similarly, if you're, and they were not gross, they were reasonable.
Yeah.
But I think similarly, if you kind of come to the perspective to a meeting already being like, I don't know, here's all my concerns. And it's like, you didn't arrive at those concerns. I like some of the comments. You didn't arrive at those concerns through like hard work. You just kind of like, what it feels like to me, at least fair or not, you just threw out the top 5 concerns about AI. It
Yeah.
feels sloppy.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this. I know you all are waiting. Like, what are the pitfalls to avoid, and what are some things that can help? Roxanne, um, scale of 1 to 5, Roxanne, how much do you agree with the following statement? Athena's initial approach to AI adoption was flawless. We made no mistakes.
It was not flawless. So whatever the right number there is. And yet I would say that, like, again, to my gym analogy, any action I think is better than no action here. So if you have done something and it flopped, you rolled out an initiative, you had a memo, you had an all hands, and you got some sort of a revolt or an eye roll or whatever, I still think taking any action to like move the ball forward actually is better than just doing nothing. That's what
That is a fair point. Let's get into specifics. Give an example of an area where Athena fell short and what we learned from that moment.
Okay. I think probably the area that caused the most kerfuffle, but again, I would still like, if I had to rewind the clock and I couldn't do it perfectly, I would do exactly what we did again, is Melanie had an offsite with our managers and talked about incorporating AI into performance reviews. And that went over very poorly. There was a lot of like, it's too early, how kind of objection, like sort of not everyone being bought in.
Yes, and to be clear for everyone in the audience, what Roxanne means is that we were incorporating an evaluation on where people were on their AI journey within the performance review.
Call it like an AI fluency score type of thing.
Yeah.
And that, caused definitely like a bit of a kerfuffle at like many levels. And yet I'm glad it started the conversation.
Yeah, I think so. When I go back and think about it, I think you're right that conversation really led to us having to face some tough things where, oh, okay, we didn't realize employees were maybe still feeling a little bit scared. They had a little bit of job insecurity, or they felt that the expectations were unrealistic, or maybe they didn't understand even what the expectations were, or how to go about achieving those expectations. And so it forced us to have some very real conversations where, to be honest, I think that if we had tried to get it perfectly, it would have taken us longer. We still wouldn't have gotten everything right. And then we would have had to solve for it. And so in this way, we threw something at the wall. It didn't quite stick. We quickly saw what needed to be fixed and we addressed it. So I agree that I like that. Where I think that we probably could and should have taken more of a beat was to just like pause and think about like, what exactly is our like motivational vision? I think we started just a little bit too strong with like what was the metaphor you used, like carrot stick metaphor? I think we were like too much stick and not enough carrot. It was like you have to do this or you will fall behind in the market. It wasn't like here's how it will open up career opportunities for you. And here's how it will actually make you have more time to focus on the things that energize you and less time focusing on those tedious things you didn't want to be doing anyway. So I think there was a little bit more of that we could have done. And then the other side of it is I think that I personally, and I think this is where I fell short as an HR person, I've told you this before, I think that I focused too much on the employee side of things and not enough on the leadership side of things. Because at the end of the day, if your leadership team isn't bought in, motivated, they don't have clarity, then they can't drive their teams to then roll out, execute the things that you are pushing at the company level. And so for me, my biggest takeaway was like, ooh, you got to start with the leadership team. You got to start with the leadership team, find out what concerns they have, figure out what strategy is going to work best for them. We'll talk about that in a second. And then from there, you figure out like a trickle down effect, because I don't think it's a one size fits all across the company. And that's where I think we fell short, is not enough motivation and not enough intentional tailoring of AI adoption strategies across different departments.
Yeah, I think a central approach to this does not work. And so it is an interesting question of like, what is HR's sort of like role in this? Because I think we've certainly seen that like how a sales team is going to adopt it, which tools are useful, is really, really different than, even a customer success team.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what better looks like. First of all, what finally turned things around for us? It sounds like the manager offsite was a piece of that. And what does the better version that we ended up rolling out afterwards look like?
From my perspective, I think a couple of things were helpful. My co-founder and I kind of put pen to paper, circulated it with leadership team first, and then shared it more broadly around like what our AI vision is, and then like very specifically what we were prioritizing and therefore what we're deprioritizing. It's like impossible for everything to be a priority. This is kind of obvious, but for example, we realized that the transformational thing for Ethena actually was figuring out how to use AI in our products such that we can deliver a truly transformational product to the market, not just, whatever, slightly better, incrementally better product. And that it meant if an engineer was pulled between two tasks, something that would move the product forward from an AI perspective, or something that would make someone more efficient internally through the use of AI, we wanted them to go the product route every time. And I think even just kind of like identifying which of these two things is more important to us was really helpful, because prioritization is key to like how everyone can understand what they're supposed to be doing day to day.
Okay. I think for me, there are a couple of things that stand out. Like if I was to write like a roadmap of like, here's what I think exactly you should do. I think first it would be get clear on your output and the end goal that you're trying to achieve, whether it's we're just trying to experiment, whether it's we have to find a way to attain 25% more quota or be 25% more productive. And how do you define that? Like whatever it is, just be super clear so that everyone knows what it is you're working towards, and then can push back, give ideas for how to achieve that, blah, blah, blah. And then you can actually measure, right? Like, did you do the thing or not? And if you didn't, where did we fall short? So I would get clear there. I would then, to be honest, the next thing before actually rolling it out, I would collect employee sentiment. I don't think you have to do like a complicated engagement survey or anything like that. It could literally be every single manager at your next one-on-one. You must ask the following question to your employees on a scale of 1 to 5. I am like scared of AI adoption, or like I feel confident in my ability to meet the company's AI goals, or whatever. I would just start there so that you start to understand, like, is it lack of job security, or is it job insecurity that people are like, what is it that you're going to need to account for and acknowledge? Because I think, Roxanne, you ended up doing this later on in our journey. You just made a statement where you were like, I know this is scary, y'all, and like I can understand why. And like I want to own that and acknowledge that. And also, here's why we must persevere. Here's why, like, the alternative isn't going to help anyone, not you or me. And
Totally.
it felt like employees there was like a sigh. Do you know what I mean? It was like a breath of fresh air of like, okay, at least I feel seen. At least I don't think that you don't get what's going on. You get it. And still you think this is the right approach. Okay, I feel a little more bought in. So I think that would be the next thing. Um, After that, I think you've got to have like a tactical strategy. And I like to your point, like what we ended up doing, where we decided like, okay, we're going to focus on the product side of things, and internally, we're going to have every VP, every department head be in charge of their own team strategy. And it's the department head that's going to be held accountable to AI adoption. So it wasn't me, it wasn't you. It was like, you are the VP of marketing. You need to determine what is realistic and you need to make that happen. And at your next perf review, we're going to check in. So I found that to be really cool because to your point, um, like the engineering team was like, hell no, we do not want our junior engineers experimenting with different tools that we haven't authorized. That could meaningfully mess things up. Whereas on the marketing team, we were like, oh, no. Every function within marketing is so unique that there's no way that I, as the VP, can be filtering everything for everyone. I need every person to be autonomously experimenting within their own function. So that was really cool.
Just like
Go
a
ahead.
note on that is I think that can be, I've worked in smaller companies and like big, huge, McKinsey Army organizations. And I think that the idea of a decentralized approach can be very scary to large organizations because it sort of feels like you're saying like, you do you. But I think it is impossible to like go for both speed and a centralized approach because like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people on this call have gone through this experience, but like, even if you just were to Google like, or ChatGPT, one particular point solution, like I'm looking for the best automation tool for
Yeah.
customer success for like SMBs servicing businesses. You would spend the rest of the year on demos. You could. Like there are a million tools, they're changing every day. All of these large companies are releasing new features every week. And so it would be impossible to have some central committee that is kind of like dictating for every function. I understand that large organizations absolutely need to do that for their enterprise-wide LLM, and they should. And there's a bunch of data privacy and related risk reasons that we did a whole webinar on. We can include in the notes. And like, I'm not in any way dismissing security concerns. They are very real, and you should have a very clear process for how and what information goes into like tools you're experimenting with. But I do think that like a centralized approach won't work in the early years of AI adoption. 5 years from now, it's gonna be fine because every function is gonna have a playbook and all of it. But like, I don't think you can have both speed of innovation and a deeply centralized lockdown process.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I just like want to say for like anyone here, I imagine most of you are from the HR persona right now on this call. I just want to acknowledge that like that framing can be both incredibly freeing and incredibly terrifying because there's this sense that like, what do you mean? Isn't it my job to roll out AI adoption as HR? But like, that's my job to enable employees. What do you mean it's not my job to own AI adoption? I want to be very clear. I feel this way about culture at the company, and I feel the same way about AI adoption. I do not believe it is HR's job to drive anything. Okay. I believe it is, and Roxanne, call me on this if you disagree. I think there are three key roles across every company. The CEO is responsible for driving and accountability because who can hold people accountable? Not me, you, right? Who can drive this forward? You, because of accountability. I think HR's job is to enable and facilitate, right? I'm going to enable you by flagging the problems that I see happening at the company, or, oh, I don't think that quite landed, or, oh, I think you two aren't talking to each other, right? I'm going to enable, and we could talk some more about what specific things HR can do in rolling out AI adoption. But I think HR fundamentally is an enabler. And then everyone else, from the department heads down to the most junior employee, they're the executors. They're the ones that are actually executing on the vision that you as CEO are driving. So your vision, your accountability, I'm enabler, and everyone else actually executes on your vision. What do you think? Hot take? No?
I think I generally agree, but an enabler can feel really frustrating if it feels like you're just poking holes. Like just, like that can be a really
Yeah,
like
sure.
yeah, lady, I bet I could have done that better, you know? And so I think one thing that like I think everyone on this call could do, for example,
Yeah.
is I think in stories. So I was helping our sales team with like AI adoption, and thankfully in my network, I have a bunch of smart sales leaders.
Yeah.
So I went around and like found someone who I thought was kind of like a guru, like a cross-pollinator, works with a bunch of sales leaders. And I kind of asked them like, hey, what are you seeing as the real deal use for AI in sales? And he gave me this one specific workflow that is magical. We implemented it and it is just great. Saves like 15, 20 minutes per call. And I said, cool, what else?
Share what it is for anyone in the audience who wants to
Sure,
like
yeah.
go
So
back to
it's
their
like,
sales team and brag about it.
yeah. So it's like a workflow with a very specific prompt that will take transcripts of a sales call, turn them into the exact format that we want our A's to be like recapping calls in, and put it in their drafts folder along with like populating all of the participants who attended the meeting. And so the AE's job is then to review instead of write and send. Magical. You could quibble with like, oh, is this reducing thinking power? I have thoughts on that, but I'll set this aside. Truly magical. And then I asked the same guy, I said, like, cool, what else? And he said, everything else you're just chasing kind of like really incremental improvements and you'll be frustrated. Like, and I was like, cool, I'll check back in 3 months. And I thought that was so helpful. And my advice would be like, if you can figure out who in the company is struggling with adoption and potentially help them either find like resources, a training, a person who can be almost like a guide through this transition, that sometimes can be like the single most helpful thing that you can do, because it is not realistic to think that HR is going to become an expert in AI for sales teams.
Yeah.
And AI for, and like that's an absurd proposition. But finding those experts or figuring out how can we make budget, you know, for this sort of learning or whatever it is, pinging groups like People Tech and saying like, who's worked with someone who's really great on helping X team use AI. I think that can be really helpful because your head of sales, your head of, you know, every function is fighting their own battle. And so just being able to like give them one resource that is useful, like really can be incredibly impactful.
Yeah, I do think your reframe is important here, which is, it should be solution oriented, right? So like when you're empowering or enabling, I love whoever, it was Nathaniel who put empower instead. Yes, of course you should flag if there's a problem, but you should come to the table with a solution, right? Like I'm noticing
Totally.
something, here's what I think would work better. In
In
fact,
the way that like Melanie, I felt like when the offsite kerfuffle happens, you know, like I was not like, boy, Melanie could have done that a little better. You know, it's like when she like, look, I'm glad she moved it forward and she uncovered some things. And now we're like, I think that kind of approach of like, I'm supporting you versus I'm pointing out where you could have done a little bit better, like that will go over very well.
for sure. CEOs are people too. And but genuinely, like I can just imagine like how much stress is on your shoulders, just like having to make all the decisions at the company and having to also shoulder the burden. Yes, when they go right, but also when they go wrong and feeling, we talk a lot about HR being a lonely role, but my gosh, I talk about a lonely role. I can't imagine being CEO. So yeah, I imagine it's much more empowering.
We all make life choices and we have to live with them.
You did choose this life. You did choose this life.
Yeah, no one to blame but myself. Yeah.
Fair enough. Let's talk just very briefly because we're close to time, and I want to give just a little bit of time to talk a little bit about AI, cool ways that we then ended up implementing AI in our product, and then some Q&A. I want to talk a little bit about the HR role. So if I'm saying like, okay, let's distribute it and have the department heads own rollout in their teams, does that mean that HR has no role? Absolutely not. We already talked about the empowerment piece, connecting people to each other, all that stuff. But I also think there are cultural things that you can do just to help more broadly move things forward. So as an example, we ended up doing an AI show and tell, which I actually, funnily enough, Roxanne, I don't know if I shared this with you. Don't worry, it's not like a spicy or scary thing. But I actually got a lot of pushback from several people on it where they were like, seems like a waste of time.
Yep.
Like I already know this stuff. Like, why are we doing an AI show and tell? Like, are we, just gonna sit there awkwardly and like pretend that we're excited about this thing, whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I have a hunch, I have a suspicion that this is gonna be higher value than we think. And funnily enough, yes, there were some, it was optional, by the way. It was optional. I never believe in forcing people to do a thing that's not, legally required or whatever. So it was optional. But one, I found that people were very excited to cheer on their teammates and be like, did that cool thing. Like, I'm really happy for you.
Yeah.
really cool to show off the cool thing that they did. Like, look how cool this is.
Totally.
But three, and this was the thing that really stuck out to me, there were people who had been too nervous to say that they didn't know how to do a thing. Like they
Mm.
didn't really understand they didn't quite understand what a custom GPT was, how to use
Yeah.
it, how to create it. And so this gave them sort of like this freedom to like not be outed, observe it, and then start experimenting with more knowledge.
Yep.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but I saw an uptick. We have an AI tips and tricks channel. I saw an uptick in people for the first time who had never been active on it be like, oh, I just tried this thing, but I'm running into issues. Can you help? Or like, could AI do this thing for me? I'd never thought about it in that way. All
Totally.
AI show and tell just like showed them different ways to use AI, especially for those people who were more reluctant and were struggling to understand real life use cases. So there's all kinds of, whether it's like an AI show and tell, whether it's an AI training, like everybody come and I'm gonna teach you how to like master ChatGPT, whether it's, hey, we're gonna have like an AI spotlight of the week in our all hands where we show and tell like this really cool thing we did. Like it's just cool. I think it's not just cool, it is high impact to build cool vibes around AI such that people feel excited about it.
And then it gets tactical, right? Because it's like, I think what's very cool about this is like someone will just show off like a workflow they built, whatever. And because they're like kind of really screen sharing and breaking it down step by step, I think that can help other people both see how these things work and think about like, oh, how might that same, a concept applied to my work? Like, I've definitely found that some of the vibe coding kind of stuff has really blown my mind when I see an example of it. And then I'm like, oh, that like is really, really cool. And it just required me to see almost like start to finish how you did that for me to think about where I might be able to use that.
acknowledge that like employees are really busy and yes, they should be making time for this, but it's not necessarily like we've carved out time in their goals to make time for this. And so sometimes they just don't have all the things or don't have the time to research everything. So if somebody can in a low lift way show them and like open their mind in a new way, how
Yep.
cool. And then Michelle Castellanos, for your question, who was running the meeting, I ran that meeting and I'll share, and let me know in the comments if anybody would like a copy of this deck. I'm happy to share it. The way that I ran it was, there were two goals to it. So it was half like psychological safety building. So I did a lot of interactive like group discussions around like, how comfortable are you with AI? And like, what's the scariest thing about AI? And like, have you been scared to speak up about this before and why? So like really just like building that. Oh, okay. Seems like maybe interest. Happy to share the deck.
The
So
people have spoken.
the
Yeah.
people have spoken. So we really, the reason I chose to run it was because I wanted it to be this cultural team building, psychological safety building moment, and get us all on the same page. And then we did the show and tell, but I did not, showcase my AI expertise. I had people volunteer, they submitted. So they submitted like everyone who thought they had like a really cool AI thing. And then we picked 5 people, we gave them a prize, and then they had to live demo the thing that they had created and they had to show it in action. And so it's different than just saying like, oh, did you know you can use AI to do the sales thing? It's another thing to be like, here it is. Look what I just entered. Or boom, look what it just spit out. And just people got like very excited. And then people felt more comfortable to ask questions because there wasn't that fear of like, if I ask a question, I'm going to look dumb.
Mhm.
So anyway, okay, I will share. Give me a minute.
Well, and just like a quick note on, I think maybe where HR approaches things different than other leaders, which is it's just good, is if you, I think I knew this was happening, but I didn't know the psychological safety component. And if you were ever like, oh, I want to spend a lot of time on AI and psychological safety, I would be like, no, thank you. And no, it's just like to be totally, I mean, people can tell me if they think I'm a unique CEO, but I think that's like a pretty common persona because I think the CEO perspective is like, how many times have we been talking about this? And I don't know if you have not gotten yourself psychologically safe, get yourself economically safe, because this is how, we're all going to be like moving forward together.
Honey, not vinegar. Honey, not vinegar.
Right. But I think that it's like clearly employees, like there was an audience that was hungry for that.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe is, to the point on like, I don't think HR should like in any way attempt to centrally control AI adoption at the company. But this idea of like building some psychological safety, some kind of what is very important, but will almost certainly be overlooked by your CEO, your CTO, your CIO, is like actually a great niche.
Fair enough. And last thing I'll say, and then let's switch it over to
Yeah.
you, Roxanne. I think like For anyone who is listening in and hearing Roxanne's, what Roxanne just said and
And it's
thinking,
like, she doesn't seem very fun. I would not like to work with her.
yeah, no.
Okay.
But like is thinking realistically, like, you know what? I think honestly, my CEO would think the same and feel the same. The one recommendation I would have for you, and I hope that I embody this, Roxanne, call me out if I'm totally lying here, is I never listen. There's a reason why your CEO is optimizing for the things that they're optimizing for. And what I wouldn't want to do is be in conflict with the business. So what I wouldn't want to do is say, like, Roxanne, I know we have this important sales team meeting, but instead of that, we're going to do psychological
Yep.
safety and AI.
Yep.
What I did do is say, like, hey, all, we have this existing team activity block that, like, we don't have plans for anywhere else. Can I just use this block for this thing? Nobody will notice. It's optional. If nobody wants to come, they don't have to come. So you can't
Totally.
complain to me later that the sales team felt bitter about having to come. They didn't have to come. It was optional. And so, like, I would think about, like, how can you work with, not against your CEO, your leadership
sure.
team, whatever. Optional is always better. Replace time, don't add time. And just make sure that you are understanding the other perspective, which is equally important. It is true that if I were derailing sales teams from selling, that would be problematic for the business. Okay, cool. So with that said, Roxanne, I'm gonna give it over to you because I feel like we've had all this build up to, cool things that enabled us to do great AI in our product.
Totally.
Share a little bit with the audience for anyone who's curious to learn what this all culminated in.
All right. So let me just do a quick screen share. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
As an example of like why I am so excited about AI, so we provide compliance training to companies, but we know that many companies have some specific needs that we'll just never be able to meet. You might be like a government contractor, you might be in healthcare, et cetera. And so tomorrow we're releasing this live, so this is just a mock-up. You could dump a PDF, dump a policy, dump even just like a document where you have documented a workflow that's really important to you. Make a couple of stylistic decisions on how you want the training. And in like 45 seconds, get a V1 of that training that if you deploy training in Ethena can live in Ethena. Will it be perfect? It will not be perfect. That's kind of like the, AI can get you some percentage of the way there. But then our customers can say like, oh, I need to tweak this language, and they can go in and redline or continue prompting on a slide basis, make this shorter, make this more relevant to retail. And I think a lot about like serving our customers so that they have time for the like really high impact work they do. And I very rarely hear from a customer, they think that like changing happy to glad is the high impact work they do. So this is like one example. Another one, I'll play this video, but won't use sound and we'll just talk over it. A lot of our customers really want to demonstrate tone at the top. Topics like code of conduct, harassment prevention are really important to us, but their leadership may not always have the time to like appear in these videos. So with the magic of AI, we can take a photo of leadership, turn it into a like puppet, an animated puppet, and then take either a recording of the script or cooler, but also terrifyingly, just like a voice sample, right? So like me on this podcast for 10 seconds. Take a photo of your company headquarters or whatever it is, and then put leadership into these scenes and have them talking about how important, data privacy is because, patients are the center of your business, as an example. And I think that that's just like a really magical thing that, yes, we could absolutely have delivered pre-AI, but it would have cost a lot of money. It would have taken a lot of time. And there's just like this magic when you start to see like, oh, these are just like two little things that AI has gifted us.
What I really like about this is how you can tell like my HR persona is coming out. I think, listen, at the end of the day, I think that HR needs to educate themselves on AI, and we need to stay on top of what's going on. That's going to both help us mitigate risk, understand our employee needs better, and partner on AI adoption more effectively. And also, I fundamentally believe, fight me on this, Roxanne, I'll fight you all day long. I fundamentally believe that the value that AI professionals bring is not being technical experts. Like that, I did not get to where I am today by being an AI wizard. And so what I think that means in terms of like marrying those two is I want like the best metaphor I can think of is I don't want to have to learn how to build an engine from scratch in order to be able to learn how to drive a car. I
Yeah.
want my vendor to build the engine from scratch, and then I want to leverage that AI engine they've built to then drive that AI car. And so what I like about this is it makes my job easier. I get to be an active AI user. I get to brag to my CEO about how AI forward I am. Look, I went for the vendor that was most AI forward. I did my research. I am leveraging AI to automate, to duplicate our impact. But like, I didn't have to build it from scratch. Like, why build it from scratch when your vendor can do that for you?
And I think like something, I think there's a very real fear of like AI washing, AI being overhyped. And I think those are all very valid claims or concerns, but something you can do, and this is why we've pushed so much to put it in product, is have this real like show don't tell moment. So whether you're maybe thinking of working with a consultant, L&D, person to bring into your team to enable everyone, or a vendor like Ethena, is be like, cool, make me the training. You said your AI does this, go do it. And like show me, because I think that for sort of like people who really have a grasp on these things, whether they're people or vendors, they're able to back up the talk with a like, here's the thing. And yeah, you can definitely see where there is a bit of smoke and mirrors, sort of snake oil stuff. And I think it's like relatively easy to separate those, through validation.
Yeah, and I also think like, I don't know, I understand. I'm saying this as an HR person. I know that we have been trained in our roles to optimize for risk mitigation. But let's be real, all that is the old school way of thinking. That is the old HR. The new HR is how do we innovate? How do we optimize? And so for me, like, yes, let's be cognizant of and responsible in thinking about the risks that come with things or the things that aren't as perfect. But I don't think we should focus on that to all exclusion.
Well, I've been pushed, like, I'm very pro thinking about risk. I run a compliance company. Again, everyone should go watch that webinar that we did on legal privilege and data privacy.
Yeah.
But guess what? How many people have their AI note takers in this call? I'm just seeing it pop up. How many of you have phones right next to, this webinar? The same thing is true of your employees. And so if you think that you have blocked AI from your company through a top-down central approach, like, I think that that's actually just misguided risk mitigation. You think you're mitigating risk, and you have just jacked up the likelihood of shadow IT usage. And so, like, I think that you have to have a really smart approach to risk that isn't just like ostrich, let me pretend that this doesn't exist.
Yeah, totally. All right, all we have just about a minute and a half left. So I'm so sorry. We're gonna ask one question, then Ace, if you could share the SHRM and HRC credit stuff, HRCI credit stuff in the comments. Roxanne, real
Yeah.
simple. Where do you even start with adopting AI? I've never started. I'm at the beginning of my journey. What do I do?
Do not panic. Get a license, ideally enterprise if you want to do business stuff, but guess what? Just you can get a personal one and don't put any work stuff in it. Pick one of the, they call them like hyperscalers, the kind of major LLMs, your OpenAIs, your Anthropics, that, and start to play with that tool. I think that one tool can get you quite far and just kind of like understanding a little bit. Then if you want to be one step further, I would identify a couple of experts. Maybe we could put some examples in a follow-up to follow on LinkedIn or X, because these tools ship like so frequently that it's actually just kind of like, I have found it better to follow people who I think are smart in the field and what they're experimenting with, than try to go find all of the news sources themselves.
Yeah. Well, okay. Oh, we are exactly at time. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will follow up with those resources, including that deck. Thank you so much. And Roxanne, I really appreciate having this conversation with you.
Right. You were so friendly. Thank you for letting me hang out here.
All right. Thanks all. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.